What is up, guys? What is up? What is up? What is up? What is up? What's really hood, I should say. Well, I thought of a subject when I was walking the dog this morning, and I thought to myself, will retro live on? Will it live on? I know it's been talked about a couple of times in the past. Will retro live on? You know, I think the easy answer that everybody wants to say, and it seems logical, is no. After our generation's gone, who will care, right? Who will care about the stuff? We're the only ones who care. We grew up with it. They're growing up with other things. Why would they care? But the more that I've gotten older here, and watching people, especially like little Nathan, my smallest, I think it will. I think it will. I think it won't be as hardcore, but I think that there's going to be people that want to collect for it and that become fans of it, especially the Nintendo stuff. Anything Nintendo, because there's such big Nintendo heads out there that I think that when it comes to Nintendo memorabilia, there's just going to be people that want it, you know? I think it will go on. Will it get played as much and stuff? Probably not, but I see it aging the way that comic books do. Like, why would people care about 1930s comic books? And they do, though. They do, you know? They definitely collect for it. They definitely get them graded. Why would people care about super old toys? They do, though. You know what I mean? They do. And I think the 80s and everything with video games in the 90s, I think was just such a, it's not just our goggles, you know, it's not just our little kid goggles. I think it was a really good time. And I think that people will appreciate that. That was mainly the real start of video games. You know, you could count, you know, Atari and Intellivision and ColecoVision and things like that. But that was, it didn't pick up yet, though. It didn't become like a thing, like a way of life type of thing. Nintendo, you know, watching all of these old news things and stuff like that, like you can watch on YouTube, actually. You can look up all kinds of stuff like Nuts for Nintendo, you know, and all these people going crazy on like CBS and everything. And they have the old news stories on there. You can watch them. I think it's not just a thing that was for us. It was like the way of life back then. It was for a kid. It was like super cool, you know. Nintendo took over, man. Like, it was, everybody liked it. It wasn't just children. It was like grown men playing video games for the first time, I think. I think grown men played Atari and stuff too. I just think that there wasn't enough to those games to catch yet. You know, when Nintendo came along, there became stuff like storylines and things like that. And I know Intellivision and Atari, they had storylines, but you had to go deep within an instruction manual and stuff to understand that. To be like, oh, this is a storyline. There's actually a story to this. You know, Nintendo really got that going with, like, I mean, look at Legend of Zelda. You knew that there was like a story there, you know? Even Metroid had a story, obviously, with Mother Brain and what you're doing there and stuff. And then you could sit here and think of tons of stuff. I mean, look at something insane like Ninja Gaiden that had cut scenes and all this stuff, which was insane, you know? Highly detailed texts like in Metal Gear and things like that you knew there was a story going on. And I think that's why it caught on a lot too, is it was more than just getting a high score. It was about completing the story. It was like reading a book or watching a movie. You wanted to see what happened at the end, you know? And you had to beat the game to do it, you know? So I think that grown men got into it too, and grown women, you know? They wanted to beat these games. And it really caught on, and it really became a way of life. A big hobby that took over, you know, more than trading cards, more than comics and things like that. It really just got everybody into it. So I do think that retro will live on. I do. And like I said, I'm kind of speaking high on the Nintendo stuff. So Nintendo, Super Nintendo, things like that, N64. I think people are going to be interested in going back to that and being like, let's check out this N64. Let's check this out. Let's check out the first 3D Mario game. You know, let's play Mario 64. I think people will say that. I do. And they'll want the cartridges. They'll want the stuff, you know. They'll collect Nintendo powers. They'll want to get them graded and things. They'll be like an old comic book or something like that. It's a piece of Nintendo history. I do think that. And a lot of people have this thing of, I know they say, oh, kids don't care about these games. I don't know, man. You know what I mean? If you have children and you think that, I guess your kids don't like video games. I'll tell you this, little Nathan and Peyton when he was little, Peyton's not much of a gamer in general, you know, so he doesn't even play new games really. It's more of like a fad thing, like he'll try like Fortnite and stuff like that, but it's only because everybody else is doing it. Like that's unfortunately kind of how Peyton is with some things, rather than having his own agenda, you know. But Nathan, I never ask Nathan to play video games. You know, Nathan will just watch me play or see me come downstairs and go, what are you doing, Dad? What are you playing? And I'll be playing something like Battletoads. And then he goes, hey, can I try that? And I'm like, sure. You want to do 2-player? You know, and then we have fun and we play. I mean, when we beat Mick Kids the other day, Nathan's the one that came up to me. We were supposed to go down there and play some arcade games with the Pandora's Box, which anybody can have fun with, right? Those beat-em-ups and stuff where you have unlimited life and stuff. But he was the one that said, hey, Dad, what's that McDonald's game that we played? Can we play that? And I said, which one? And I turned on Mick Kids and said, this one? And he's like, yeah. And then all of a sudden, we played it for about a half an hour, and Nathan's going, hey, Dad, can we beat this? Can we beat this game? And I said, yeah. I mean, strap in. It's not a short game. No passwords, no nothing. We got to get in here, you know. And so we did. We played for like 4 hours, and we beat it, you know. That's when I recorded that Grimace's birthday short that I have on my channel. We were playing Mick Kids, and we beat it that night. And so I was going to put up a video of us beating it, but he was in his underwear, so I didn't want to post it. But anyway, he'll have it for safekeeping someday. It's in my phone. I'll save it. But anyway, I do think it'll live on just because I see how Nathan is. You know, and there's other kids like that, man. There's other kids like that, especially our children who genetically they like video games, and they probably are going to like Nintendo if you do, you know. And as for anything else, I mean, Nathan loves Sonic the Hedgehog too. My nephew was over the other day, and my nephew and Nathan, I hear him laughing downstairs. Well, would you know it, my nephew got the Sega Genesis working, and they had Sonic and Knuckles in there. I mean, that was all them, dude. Hey, Uncle Dan, we're playing Sonic. Yup, and they beat Sonic 2, and they get through it. I think my nephew's beaten Sonic 1 and 2, so he's kind of trying to beat Sonic 3 and Sonic and Knuckles now. But yeah, they went down there, and they're just playing, they're having fun, they're laughing. I recorded them and stuff, you know what I mean? Like, that's not me putting the controller in their hand, dude. No, definitely not, you know? But Nathan goes downstairs, and he wonders what all these posters are, and he wonders what this stuff is. And when you introduce it to them, they'll play Mario World, man. Mario World and Donkey Kong Country and games like that, they are timeless games. Somebody 50 years from now can play Mario World and have a good time, you know? It's just a fun game. It's not a game of the times, like you had to be around in the 90s to enjoy it. No, dude. No. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. That's just a wrong thing to say. That's not true. You know, these games are still popular and still going on to this day because they're good. That's why. They are good games. There's a reason why there's only a little group of people that play in television and things like that. Because that was a thing of their time. Going back to that's a little rough. You know, it's a little rough because there's not a whole lot to it. You know, it's very simple. It's a couple of screens. It's 2 or 3 screens most of the time. You've got your games like Haunted House and stuff that are more, but even then, the premise of the game is so simple, you know? Not a lot of power-ups, not big bosses, no story, really, you know, unless you have the manual and everything, and you really use your imagination. Where NES, you play Rygar, you know what's going on. There's a story going on here. Simon's Quest, there's a story going on here, you know? So I definitely, and what indie games are doing is they're introducing retro, basically, to new gamers. So new gamers are basically playing retro. Because when you're playing Blazing Chrome and Messenger and Oniken and all those games, they're just retro games, basically. Bloodstained, it's just Castlevania, man. Blazing Chrome, it's fucking Contra. Super Cyborg, Contra Super C. That's what it is. Messenger, Ninja Gaiden and Strider. Yeah, it's all it is. They're just copying it. That's all they're doing. You know? So I think it'll live on, because if people like those games, you can even argue Cuphead. Cuphead's basically just kind of a retro game. Basically. You know? It's just a boss rush. Basically. And it's like Contra. It's like Gunstar Heroes. How about some of these shooters? Retro Force Redux and stuff like that. It's basically just Gradius or Life Force. You know, it's basically all it is. There's games that are like R-Type. They're just new games that are called something else, but heavily inspired by the retro, and people enjoy them, right? So why would it fade away, right? So I think that there will still be people going. I think conventions will definitely slow down. But conventions could have games like the Nintendo Switch and stuff in the future. But with things going digital, I do think it's going to become more of a harder thing to do. You know, you got to have that physical for conventions to live on, you know. So I do think it'll be a smaller group 50 years from now doing things like conventions and stuff like that. That's probably fair to say. But will people be buying things on eBay or whatever, buying and selling apps there are at that time, or if they're even apps or whatever the hell they are at that time? I think so. I think this stuff will still be bought and paid for. It'll become Nintendo and Sega video game memorabilia. People are already grading stuff, but they're going to want that physical piece. Yup. You see that thing in the museum? You see Mario 3? I want to have that. And I want to have that in my house, and I want to put it in a glass case and hang it up, because you know what? That was one of Mario's main games. And the hype for that game when it came out was a big deal. And there's going to be people doing research on stuff like that. And I think it's going to be a thing that they want, you know. There's collectors for everything. And I definitely think that retro will live on. Retro gaming as we know it will become more retro, and it'll continue to go. And people are going to continue to want game rooms to add. And part of their game room is going to be that little NES area, that little Super Nintendo area, that little Sega Genesis area. Those are going to be things that people want, because they're going to read and watch videos about how it was, and they're going to want that stuff, you know? And again, I'm sure the argument would be, well, there's not a lot of people getting Atari stuff in a television, because, first of all, that just wasn't super popular. That shit failed. You know, it was a failed thing. It was the video game crash. It didn't do well. People didn't want to keep doing it. It failed, and Nintendo made it to where it came up, and it never left. It never left after Nintendo NES came out. Never again was there any kind of problems with video games. It's only gotten bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And I think that's going to continue to happen. And people will always appreciate the old man NES and Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis for all the things they did for video games. And there's going to be collecting people out there that want everything, and they're going to really want this stuff. You know what I mean? That's just what I think. But let me know in the comments below what you think, and that is what I have to say about that. Retro, if I had to be a betting man here, which I am, we'll live on. Peace. God bless.